Okay, so what I'm going to do is have a look at your comments. Let's see what you guys are saying. Separating, just started the process. Husband is planning on moving out, just started the process of mediation. Okay. 2 years in, custody settled, FDR for finances in March. Okay. 2 years in, that's a long time. At least you've managed to agree what's happening with the children, but it looks like you've got quite a bit of time for your finances. I hope you get to agreement at the FDR, which ultimately you just want to get this settled after 2 years of battling. So thank you for joining. So happy to see so many of you here. Have you been before to any of my talks? I'd love to know. Is this your first session with me? How have you find them if you've been before? But thank you for joining me. Welcome to all of you, whether it's your first time, whether you have been to these talks that I do every Wednesday online around 9:30. I am about to apply for divorce. It's what my husband wants to. However, my worry is how much will he fight against me regarding finances? He earns more than you, and you're working part-time. First session. Oh, welcome. Thank you for joining me. Right at the beginning, need info on how this process works and what I am going to be up against. Okay, well, you're in your right place to get that information. So glad to have you here. The way these sessions work is that there'll be one every day between Monday and Thursday at 9:30. They're usually an hour. I will talk for the first part and then I'll answer some questions at the end. So if you've got a question, put it in the chat box. I would love it if you could interact with me while I'm talking. It's always quite nice when you can see people talking to you through this stuff that I share, because otherwise I feel like I'm on my own talking to a computer screen. It's really nice to get your input, to find out if it's resonating, if you've got questions. So I would love it if you would chat to me in the chat box while I am sharing information. And let me share my screen to start with. I think that's where I should probably start so that we can get going. Okay. Hope you can see that okay. It's showing to me that you can. So I hope you can see that. So welcome to these sessions that I'll be running every day this week. And really, it's that time of year where everybody's thinking about divorce, that people are starting to take some action on something that they'd been thinking about for a while. And we often get it at the beginning of the year. You may or may not know, but it's the time where a lot of divorce applications are submitted to the court. And so it's quite a busy time for lawyers, but also it's that time where I guess people are thinking about resetting, thinking about what they want to do with their lives. Like, do they want to continue in this marriage? Do they feel like they've waited long enough and they want things to change? So that's why this time of year is quite a busy time. And so I wanted to put this on now because actually so many of you are sort of making this decision and you're thinking, what do I do next? And so I want to take you through some basic information. Obviously, I can't cover lots of things in the 4 hours that we'll be doing this, but as much as I can in the time, it's just information for you on how to start, what you need to look at, and the kind of things that will come up. So if you've got questions, feel free to put them in the chat box as I'm going along, as I said, and I'll come to them at the end. I've been on your sessions and it's just my struggles that I'm going through and the confidence level. So yeah, it is really difficult. Divorce is a very difficult, challenging time. And so I completely get that, sometimes you just need to get your questions answered. Sometimes you just need to get the clarity and confidence to be able to take the steps. So if this is your first time here, you might be wondering who I am. And let me just share with you a little bit about, who I am and why I'm talking to you today. If you've not been here before in my sessions, my name is Bhavna Radia. I qualified as a family lawyer many, many years ago in my 20s, and started working in a family practice, very busy family practice. And I was helping people with all sorts of family matters, divorce, injunctions, child arrangements, finances, all sorts of different things, adoption. I got married when I was 27, and just like probably all of you, I believed it was happily ever after, kind of saw myself with the person forever. Um, we've got three girls together, so that was a blessing for me that I have my three girls. There was lots of difficulties in the marriage, but you keep hoping that things are going to get better, and you keep moving forward with that things can change. I can make them better. Maybe we don't have to go down that route. And it was something that I didn't want to consider, even though I helped people get divorced. I didn't believe that it was something I would have to face because I understood the pitfalls. Life doesn't happen like that, unfortunately. Well, it didn't for me. I found it really tough staying in the marriage, but because we have children together, because I was so scared of finances, I was so scared of what would the effect it would have on the children that I stayed for many, many years, even though I kept considering whether the relationship would is right for me and would continue. You can tell we obviously did get divorced. This was in 2011, and the children were really young. They were 9, 6, and 1 years old at the time. And I'd taken a small break from my career to obviously manage things at home and look after the family. Now, if you've made this decision, and most of you have, that divorce is where you are going, you know that it's not an easy decision. This wasn't something that I just decided very quickly. I agonized over it for years and years. I got to that point where I had to make that decision and I had to take that step. It was a long time coming, but I fought against it and I really struggled with that decision, even though I made it. My mental health was really affected by what I realized I was going to go through, the fact that my relationship was over and I had to almost start again. It was like such a shock that your life is going to be turned upside down. That future that you thought you had, the dreams that you had been kind of wiped away. I don't know if some of you have felt like this as well. And I was really worried about the finances. I knew that I couldn't make ends meet because I wasn't working, and looking after the children meant that, being able to work 40, 50 hours a week was going to be a struggle. And actually, the children really, it was the one real reason that kept me there for so long. I was worried about the children. It was one of the most difficult times in my life. And I remember thinking, but I've got legal knowledge. I've got all that experience of helping people through this time. And I still find I'm finding it difficult. I wonder what other people that don't have the knowledge that I've got must be feeling. And that was such a big realization that actually all of you would struggle more than I did because of, you don't have the legal knowledge. You are coming at this without the foundation that I had, at least. Um, just got a private message. Yes, definitely feel like this. Not my decision, but can't say I've not thought about it too. Yeah, often it's not a complete surprise that that person made the decision because you may have been thinking about it as well. So here's some pictures of me and the children. You can see on the top, that's where the children were up to when, the decision was made. Probably the first left, Maya was a bit younger. She was 5, 6, so she was a bit younger, and Shreya was about to finish primary school. Um, And then these are pictures from the ones on the bottom are pictures from Shreya's graduation. I always felt like because I was making this decision, my children wouldn't thrive. And I have to say that isn't the case. They're definitely thriving. They definitely think it's the right decision. They tell me now I did the right thing. Um, and obviously, everybody's journey is different. And in the last 13 years, I've been through challenging times since I made that decision and we got divorced. Even once the divorce was done, there were some difficult times, but also a sense of relief and joy that it was over and we could stabilize and settle. Um, I did end up homeless for a period. There was lots of things that happened during my divorce. But just to give you some hope, things are really different for me now. They have been for many years. I've got three different businesses. The girls are much older and settled. They're 23, 20, and 15. And life moves on. We've went where we don't think about our situation as much because things are so different. And I'd love to hear how you're feeling about the divorce. Are you really worried about certain things? What's coming up for you with fear? What are you scared of? Because it's really good to have that self-awareness of what's coming up for you. Family and friends' input at times does not help, but it's society. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but society does. It makes you struggle as well. I've decided to move in with my mum, who is elderly, and just go home every day for, say, an hour to collect the post. I'm hoping that the longer I am away, it creates the separation. From your opinion, does this route help? Well, I'll come to that question at the end. But yeah, good question to ask. So why am I doing these sessions? Why do I put so much effort? Because actually, you'd be surprised at the amount of effort that these sessions do take. Why do I do this? And actually, it's my way of giving back because when I was going through my divorce, I really struggled, and people gave back to me. I didn't have any money at the time. And I had so many people rally round to help me. And I remember one particular person who said to me, I'm really happy to help you. She wasn't a family member. Really happy to help you, but one day can you pay it forward? And this is my way of paying it forward for the help that I got. But actually, for me, this time, uh, many, many years ago, I'd been homeless for 6 months with the children. And actually, it was this week that in 2016, that I bought my house and moved in. So this week, end of this week, was the 13th, which is actually the day this challenge finishes, is when I moved into my own home after being homeless for a period. And it was such a massive thing to be able to stabilize the children. I kind of like to mark that date so I always remember and feel the gratitude for how far I've come since I bought my own place with my name on it after some really difficult times. So that's quite enough about me. I'm not here just to talk about me, but I wanted you to understand my journey so you know that I have experienced it myself and what you're going through, I definitely know about. So yeah, just wanted to share that with you. So just having a look at the questions. My child has additional needs. I'm really worried as I've been his primary parent and carer. My parents are no longer alive to support me, so I only have my sister who lives an hour away. My husband has options to live elsewhere, but I don't. Worried about having to sell and find somewhere affordable. My child, home, and finances are the biggest thing. Yeah, these are the biggest things that you really struggle with. Money is a big struggle for me at the moment, so I'm eternally grateful for you, for your knowledge and time. I find them incredibly grateful and can go as far as saying life-changing, giving me knowledge, hope, and faith for the future. To the person who said that, I really appreciate your words. And this is exactly what I do it for, to help you. His criticism of me is affecting my mental health. Yeah, that can affect stress, anxiety, panic, failure, but not my failure. It's his failure of me and the kids, stayed for the kids, but now they are adults. They are the momentum making me do this. Yes, I get that. Okay, so let's move into almost what I see as the 7 stages of divorce. And I always start from accept, because actually through this 7 stages, you are moving through them when you're getting divorced. And acceptance is almost the end of the 7 stages of grief. And you may have heard of the 7 stages of grief. When you are going through a difficult time in your relationship and you are considering whether for the relationship to end, you'll be going through those 7 stages of grief. And the last one is acceptance. And that is almost the acceptance that your relationship is over. And where I start, which is the acceptance of knowing what is going to come and getting your mindset right, looking at some self-care and different things to get to that awareness of acceptance that this is the next stage. And that's where I like to start on my 7 stages, is the end of that 7 stages of grief. The grief doesn't necessarily end, but you've accepted that the relationship is at an end. The second element is prepare and protect. And I like to do this with my clients. I need to know that you are protected from a personal safety point of view, from boundaries, from domestic abuse potentially, protected from your assets as well as anything that's important to you, protected digitally. So lots of different things we need to protect. And then preparing is starting to get ready for the legal process that is about to start. And there's lots of things that we can do to get you ready. And some of that is planning as well. Planning for what this could look like, planning for different things. And I'll take you through a little bit of that today as well. The third stage is the legal process, and I'm going to give you an overview today of that process so you understand what that involves. The fourth and fifth, you'll see there is finances and children. And again, I'll be talking about finances tomorrow and children the day after. And then stage 6 is closure and complete. And so this is making sure that everything that you have agreed, there is closure by getting it legally binding, by making sure we've got the right documents, making sure that your divorce is at an end and you're legally divorced, but also making sure that you've got closure on other elements that aren't necessarily to do with the divorce, but it's really important to consider different things at stage 6 so that we make sure that you're starting your next phase of life correctly. And stage 7 is all about rebuilding, whether that is looking at your mental health, whether it is looking at stability, your finances for the future, but also what is your dream for the future? This is not just about a divorce. We have to look at your vision for the future and really create it. I did a lot of work on my vision, and every day I still do work on my vision because I have to keep moving forward, and I'm really excited about life. And so finding that excitement and then creating it is really important. And also finding out who you are now, that whole self-identification piece. Who are you? Who do you want to be? Who do you identify as now? Because life is so different. So that's stage 7, and it's a really exciting time. I can talk about that for a long time. So I'll just move on to the legal process, which is stage 3. And I'll take you through some elements of this process that I have. So what do we need to look at when we're looking at the legal process of divorce? And there's a few different elements. The first bit is actually looking at the ending of your marriage. Because although we talk about divorce, divorce is one element. We've got finances, children, lots of practical things and emotional elements as well. But the divorce is the legal ending of your marriage. It doesn't necessarily mean that your finances will be settled just by this bit. So you have to see that they're kind of linked together, but quite distinct as well. Some people will only need to end their marriage. They won't have any assets in their name or the other person's name that they need to look at, and potentially no children. And if that's the case, this is the only bit you need to deal with in a divorce. And that's the legal ending of your marriage. Now, when we talk about divorce, it's a completely different thing because it changed in 2022 to no fault divorce. Before we had to put fault down or there was other factors, it was quite complicated. But it's been simplified, which is a really good thing. There's now only one ground for divorce, and that is that you are saying that your marriage has broken down. Nobody needs to ask what happened, whose fault it was, is there evidence? None of that needs to happen. And it's really important you know that because sometimes we're scared of what the other person might say if we declare adultery or their unreasonable behavior or what happened. That can start the divorce in not a very nice way. So if this is the kind of, you were worried about that element, you now know you don't need to blame the other person. You don't need to say what happened. No evidence needed, no justification needed. Nobody needs to know what happened. That is between you and your ex-spouse. You can now apply online, which is a great thing as well. Before we used to do these paper applications, and you can apply as a sole application or a joint application. And again, that's a new thing, this joint application, but can be a great thing. If you are amicable, if you're both in agreement to the divorce and you kind of want to start things off with that footing, start off with a joint application online. You would be applicant one and applicant two, not great names, but lawyers aren't that creative. And both of you then are in control of the process, and one person doesn't feel like everything's against them. With the joint application, either of you can apply for the conditional order and for the final order. So just so you're aware that you're both in control of the whole process. But a joint application isn't for everyone. You may be considering going down that route, but just think about if it's the right thing for you. If there's been domestic abuse, it might not be appropriate for you to apply together because you may not want to have discussions. Also, that person, applicant two, your ex-spouse, can kind of stop you from moving forward if they're not in agreement or they just want to make things difficult for you. So if that's the case, it's probably better for you to do a sole application. If you don't want the communication with the other person saying, are you going to fill in your part of this? Or you think they may hold you back, or you just don't want to have this conversation or make them in control, then probably better to make a sole application. Because it does give you an element of control, a sole application. There's no option for that person to stop you easily from getting divorced if that's a decision you've made, but actually they're not involved, they're not engaged in this, they don't agree. You can still make an application for divorce and get it through without them being able to stop you. From a point of view of how can they stop you, there's only very limited reasons for them to stop you. Number one is that the UK courts don't have jurisdiction to look at your divorce because maybe you live abroad. You don't even live in the UK. Obviously, the UK is not the right place for your divorce then. It might be that they're saying that your marriage was never valid because you were underage or because you didn't have mental capacity to get married. Those are the very limited reasons that they can stop you. But if you want to get divorced and the other person is saying no, you can still pull that through. So it's a good change overall. Lots of people will say, well, I've decided to get divorced. Do I need a solicitor? Well, a solicitor will charge you about £1,200 to £1,500 to do your application for you and manage the rest of the process. Well, the courts have made it really simple for you to do this yourself. And that's the point, that most people make their own application. They don't use a solicitor because £1,500 plus VAT is quite a lot of money when it's not needed. You can do it yourself. There may be some elements that you have questions around, but that would be it. It's not so complex. You're not writing a paragraph of what happened. And I can see there's a question saying, how detailed does the application have to be in? Well, it's questions that the court will ask you and you answer them. You're not going to put down what happened. So I know you've said that he may want to malign you in the process. There's nowhere where you can. because it says, has your marriage broken down? You say yes. That's it. They move on to other questions. You're not talking about what happened. There is no question about detail because you're just answering questions. So you can do this yourself. The thing that you need to be aware of is that there is an application fee to start a divorce. It's almost £600 to start the divorce proceedings and almost £60 for a financial order if you need to have one of those. And I'll talk about that a bit more tomorrow. So what I wanted to, I think I've skipped a slide, but there you go. Just kept talking. Sorry about that. Just wanted to show you this timeline because now we have a timeline for divorce proceedings, and I hope you can all see that okay. Let me know if you need me to zoom in or anything. So when you start the divorce process, you're at number 1. At number 2, you've submitted it, and the court will have a look at whether everything is fine, and then they will send your application to the other person if everything is all fine with your application. Once number 2 has happened and it's been sent to your husband or wife, then the next stage is number 3. But in between 2 and 3, you have a 20-week reflection period. So you have to wait that 20 weeks to be able to apply for the next stage, which is conditional order. And when you get that, they will look at your application for conditional order, and the court will decide whether you can get an application, whether you can get conditional order. So that's number 4. Number 5, the court grants you conditional order. But once you've got that conditional order, it starts a 6-week cooling off period. So there's lots of cooling off periods here. So lots of gaps. And that's why I wanted you to know the timeline. Once that 6 weeks has passed, then you can apply for your final order. The court will send you the final order usually within 24 hours. That's an administrative process. So there is no gap between 6 and 7 usually. But you can see it's a minimum of 30 weeks to get through this process because we've got 20 weeks here and we've got 6 weeks here and then applying for your final order. But actually, once you make the application, there can be about 2 weeks, 3 weeks for it to be sent to the other person. And then once you make your application for conditional order, it can be 2-3 weeks before you're granted it. So that's why it's around 30 weeks that you'll be waiting. So really important to understand that timeline. So I hope that makes sense. Let me know if you've got any questions around that. Okay, so I know that there's a question about finances and child arrangements, and I will talk about that, and hopefully I'll answer your question, but if not, let me know and I'll come to that as well. So looking at this process, you can see that we have the finances to resolve where people have assets and liabilities. So anything you own, so like property that you live in, you may have other financial matters like investment properties. You might have ISAs, money in the bank, pensions, jewelry, cars. Really, anything above £500 is something that you own. It may be that you lent somebody £50,000. That's also an asset because they're due to pay it back to you. So all of these things are assets. And then what you owe is liabilities or debts. And these are things money that you owe to somebody else. So you may have a credit card with a balance. You may have an overdraft. You might have a loan. You might have a loan to a family member that also is relevant. So anything that you owe is also something you need to consider. And we're talking about what you own and owe in your name and in the other person's name and owned jointly. So these are your assets, and these are the things that need to be shared. And part of your divorce process will be working out how your finances are shared, everything that you own, and how you will share everything that you owe as well. what the courts hope is that you will reach an agreement on your finances. They don't really want to deal with it. They want you to reach an agreement. You have to go through this process called financial disclosure, which is both of you being transparent about what you have, what assets you have, and what debts you have in your name and joint names. So we get this picture of what there is. Once we have this picture, we are then looking at how can we share finances between you in a way that is fair. And I'll talk a bit about this tomorrow. In fact, a bit more detail about it tomorrow. What the hope is that you'll reach an agreement on how things will be shared. And then it is, I think someone's writing on my slides. Very strange to see lines coming up there. But yeah, when you get to an agreement, then you have to put your agreement into a document called a consent order. And as I mentioned, I'll talk about this a bit more tomorrow. Your consent order can only be filed at court once you have conditional order. So you have to go through the first part of the divorce process before you can send your agreement, financial agreement, to the court. And the benefit of doing this is that it makes it legally binding, and neither of you can change your mind. The other way to get to a settlement on your finances is a court-ordered financial order or settlement. And what this means is that you've tried everything to get to an agreement and you can't. So what you've done is you've asked the court to help you get to that decision. And this is where the court takes matters out of your hands, and you will have court orders telling you how your finances will be shared. And obviously, it's not ideal to go that way because it's expensive, it's stressful, it's never as simplified as you would think. It's quite a complex situation. We don't want you to go down that route if you can help it, because there is a lot of stress involved. And I wouldn't want you looking at fees of 50, 60, 70,000 pounds each just because you couldn't get to an agreement. But the problem is, obviously, an agreement has to be reached and both of you have to accept that agreement beforehand. It's not always possible to do. Sometimes people are difficult. Sometimes people are not reasonable. And so you may end up in court for a judge to make that decision for you. But just looking at that timeline again, let me take you back. Where you can see number 5, the court grants conditional order, it would be after that you would file your consent order at court. You would not apply for your final order until your financial consent order has been approved by the court. So there may be a delay here if you've got finances to share between 5 and 6, waiting for the court to approve your consent order, and then you apply for your final order. The reason why is it's not a good idea for you to be divorced before you've reached an agreement on your finances. It has legal consequences, so you just need to be aware of that. So now coming to the children, and I know that somebody asked about that. So how are the children linked to the divorce process? Well, they are obviously involved. If you've got children and you are separating, divorcing, then you need to get to an agreement about what happens to them. And of course, I'll talk more about this when we go more in depth around children, but it's hoped by the court that you'll reach an agreement about the children, where they should live, how much time they should spend with both of you, where they go to school, and all the other elements that you need to agree for your children's sake. Both of you, if you are married, are likely to have this thing called parental responsibility, which means you've got both got the same rights and responsibilities towards the children. And any agreement you reach has to be in the child's best interests. It's really important that it is in the child's best interest. That's what the courts expect. If you can't get to an agreement, then you can ask the court to help you, and the court can make a decision on various things like who the child lives with, how much time you both spend with the child, whether you can take the child abroad on holiday, all of these different things, education, medical procedures, whether you can move out of the area and live in a different part of the UK, whether you could move abroad. So many different things a court can help you answer. They can make decisions for you. Again, it's last resort. You don't want to go there unless you have to. But of course, that might be the only option for some of you, and it may be that that's what you're looking at. So that's a little bit about children. I'll go into it in a bit more detail. When we look at the timeline, again, just taking you back to this stage, when we look at the timeline, there is nowhere where the children agreement needs to sit, because the courts don't need to see what you've agreed. They don't need to know. They assume as parents you've come to the best agreement for the children, and they don't expect you to send anything to the court. They don't expect you to comply with any sort of time frame. You reach an agreement when you do. Usually it's when people have reached that agreement for when they actually live separately, they'll have some level of agreement of what's going to happen with the children. But you don't need to worry about a timeline. You can reach that agreement whenever, and you don't need to get it sort of legally binding as such. So moving on, I know we're coming to the end of this session. What are your priorities? Really interesting thing. And when I'm talking to my clients at stage 2 that I shared with you before, all about preparing, this is something that I ask. What is it you want to achieve? What is negotiable for you and what is non-negotiable? And what is your vision for your future? Because at stage 7, we want to start making that happen for you. And when you start this with a vision, you know where you're going. So all of this is interlinked. Your priorities might be keeping the family home. It might be making sure that you have 50-50 contact arrangement for your children so that you're both co-parenting and you have a good co-parenting relationship. It might be that your priority is to move into a smaller home in the same area so your children can get to school. What are your priorities? Really interesting to do this exercise. Think about 3 things that are the most important thing to you as part of this divorce. And also really interesting to think about is what is negotiable for you. There may be certain elements that are negotiable and certain things that are non-negotiable. For example, when I was going through my divorce, what was non-negotiable was that the children lived with me. And I had most of the time, and my ex-husband had contact, and actually the contact that he wanted, because I wanted the children to have a really good relationship with their dad. And that was non-negotiable for me because he did long hours, he traveled a lot, and it wasn't possible for him to take care of the children. There was things that were negotiable, and that was the level of contact. I was happy to discuss that and work out something that was right for the children and right for the 2 of us. What are your negotiables and non-negotiables? Because actually knowing that can really help you through this process. It will get really tough at times. And when you know the bits that you're willing to fight over and the things that you are not, it means that you won't fight every battle. You'll choose them and choose them wisely. And where do you see yourself when this is over? How do you see your life? What do you want to achieve? How does it feel? Really interesting exercise because you kind of start off with a plan. And that's actually your day 1 task, is to reflect on your goals and to think about, what are your priorities? What are your non-negotiables? What's your vision? So that's the milestones. Like, what do you see as your vision for the future? And think about your plan for getting there. How do you think? How difficult is it going to be? Where do you think your obstacles might be so that you can think about putting a plan in place? And I think Nelma will drop you a link to the workbook, which we've created especially for these 4 days. And it's got a little bit of a summary and then your tasks there. So feel free to write them down in your notebook, in your journal. You can use the workbook to write in there. You could print the workbook, whatever works for you. So feel free to do that. Tomorrow I'm going deep on finances, understanding your finances and how to share finances, which will be a really interesting session. So do come along to that. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to answer some of your questions. I think one of the questions I got there is if I can't come to all four sessions, will there be a recording? Yes, there will be a recording sent out to you. And actually, we have a community area that you can join, and all the recordings will be there for you to jump on, watch, and actually you can share your tasks with me. If you are thinking about what your priorities are and you're unsure, jump in the hub and we can support you through that. So that's where the recordings will be. Let me just see what questions I've got. I know that there were a few questions and I just want to make sure I answer them. So let's go back. Okay, so this was a question that I mentioned before. Family friends input at time does not help. I've decided to move in with my mum, who is elderly, and just pop home for an hour to collect the post. I'm hoping that the longer that I'm away, it creates separation. From your opinion, does this route help? And I can only give you general opinions because I don't know enough about your situation. So anything that I do in answering your questions, do know that it's general help because I don't know enough to give you something really personalized. But it can be a good way of getting a separation and just sort of testing the separation and getting used to how this might feel. Where you have somewhere to stay, you can come home, you can be staying at your mum's temporarily. That can be a really good option, but it's understanding what could happen. So sometimes when somebody moves out like this, even though it's temporary, even though you're popping in and out of the house, and you're still involved in the house, the other person might change the locks. They may stop you from coming back in. So just as long as you're aware of that, even though you own the house jointly, sometimes they can still do this and it can cause you a bit of an issue. So just be aware that something like that could happen. If you've got young children or children that are under 18 and they're still living at home, then the other person might say, well, you've moved out. I'm caring for them full time. So actually, maybe I should continue caring for them full time because you've not been around anyway. And if you did end up in court, a court might say, well, this is the status quo, the children seem settled, I'm not going to change it. So just be aware of things like that. Okay, hope that helps. I know it's quite general, but as I said, I don't know enough. My child has additional needs, and I'm worried that I've been his primary parent and carer. Oh, that's not a question, is it? Let's just keep going. My husband disclosed he was gay over 10 years ago. I've gone through the same, and I guess you're talking about the mental health issues and trying to make that decision, but was not brave enough to divorce until now due to family culture and society. But having had breast cancer 4 years ago, I started reflecting on my life and happiness. It really does make you think about your life. I think we're so busy waiting for the right moment. And I did some videos on this recently that sometimes the right moment never comes and you've just wasted so many years of your life waiting. And it's important to live and be happy today. So thank you so much for sharing that. I put everything into my marriage and family, but was subjected to 10 years of emotional and physical abuse. I've had to leave the family home with my two children since November, but I'm in the process of getting a non-molestation injunction and occupation order so I can put a roof back over my children's head. Unfortunately, I have nothing in my name, and my husband is using this to take advantage. It's the finance aspect of divorce which is making me really anxious. I've got no funds, whereas he does. And again, really important point. What I find is the person that has no funds or little funds will find that the other person takes advantage of this. It's quite usual and common, but we want to make sure that you are well supported and you've got knowledge as much as you need, because otherwise you can feel lost. And because they've got funds to get help, you always feel like you're in the on the back foot. Luckily, I'm able to qualify for legal aid, and that's great. So you've got that. I have proof of abuse and control. I'm feeling so guilty for trying to do the right thing by my children, and I have doubts about the steps I am taking. I equally felt like that, so I really understand. I felt so guilty and I overcompensated for so long because of what the children had gone through. But actually, on the other side, they tell me it was the right thing, and they're doing so much better. And so I get what you're saying, but just from my experience, obviously, what happened with me, the children are well settled, stabilized, and happy, and absolutely don't blame me for having to take that step. Really good question next. Can you start as joint and move to applying for sole of joint if joint fails for whatever reason? So once you've started a joint application, if say for example you started the application and the other person is refusing to apply for conditional order, you don't have to do your conditional order together. You can apply for it yourself. The final order, again, you can apply for it yourself. But don't forget, the other person can also apply for it. So just bearing in mind that you don't want them to apply for final order until your finances are settled. It's really important to remember that. So if that's the case and you want to keep control of that final order, with a joint application, you can't. They can apply for final order. With a sole application, there is an element of control that you have. So it might be better to start a sole if you have any question marks. But you can apply for conditional order and final order yourself, but so can the other person. There was an incident of domestic abuse a few years ago. I feel he has changed somewhat, but I'm worried that during the divorce process, things could change. You never know what is going to happen once you start divorce proceedings. I always say to people that prepare for the worst, but hope for the best, because we want it to be the best, but we never know. So we have to prepare that things aren't going to go as well as we would like. You will see sides of the other person that maybe you hadn't seen before. So yes, it can get really difficult, but equally, I know people where they said it's going to be really difficult. The other person's going to make this really hard, and then they didn't. So you never quite know. I think I answered the question on how detailed the application needs to be. If finances and child arrangements have not been made before the conditional order is ready, can you delay it? I would always delay the conditional order if you've not reached an agreement on your finances, because you don't want the other person applying for the final order, which they can do with a sole application. So delay the conditional order. But if you are ready with your finances, then you can apply for the conditional order, get the agreement drafted up and submitted to the court, and then apply for your final when it comes through. Can spouse apply for final order before the financial consent order is agreed? Yes, they can. If you've done a sole application, and you've applied for conditional order, you have to wait 6 weeks to get your final order. The other person has to wait 3 months to get that final order, but they could apply for it once you've got conditional order. So if you are unsure about how long your finances might take, I would hold back the conditional order. Just don't apply for it. With a sole application, they can't apply for it. So that's the best thing to do if you're unsure of how they will behave, is always a sole application, and don't apply for conditional order. What if he asks for a certain amount and is happy to leave the house and assets to me? Well, that might be great if you've reached an agreement, but you have to assess whether that's fair. So you might find that he says, you can keep everything in your name, you can keep the house, but I want 100,000. If you don't know what he has in his name, he might have a pension that's worth 500,000. You might be losing out. But once you've seen everything that there is and you're happy and that seems like a fair agreement, yeah, that's absolutely fine. I earn double what my husband earns, but still feel financially insecure about taking the steps towards divorce. We have grown apart after nearly 20 years of marriage. I really understand, even though you're earning double, you will feel like financially what is going to happen. And that comes from getting some clarity, understanding what the options could be, and understanding your income and expenditure. And obviously, I'll talk about that tomorrow. Will you give advice on what is fair if one person has the children? I can't really do it on these calls. I'll speak to you about the kind of things you need to take into account tomorrow to work out what is fair. And obviously, the children, where the children live, is one element of that. I can't give you specific advice. Obviously, I don't know enough. I have investment in a family-owned business that I wouldn't want him to take 50% of and fetter away. Can I put this in trust for the children? Well, it may be that if you've got an investment in a family-owned business, that you keep hold of that investment. They don't have to necessarily take 50% of everything. It doesn't work quite like that. You keep certain things and the other person keeps certain things, and you're trying to get to a fair agreement. And it may be that you keeping that investment yourself is the fairest way of doing it. My children are grown up, so not involved. If that's the case, when you're looking at finances, you're not taking the children into account. You're not worrying about reaching agreements around the children. So day 3 probably won't be as relevant for you if your children are over 18. He will not easily let me have the kids and will try and prove I'm a bad mother. Even if he's not successful, is it in their interest to be split between 2 homes? What do the courts usually decide? Interesting question. Generally, the courts have a starting point of 50-50 for the children. So you're both sharing time equally. If you think that that's not fair for whatever reason, then you have to show the courts why that is. And generally, the courts are looking at what is in the best interests of the children. Is it best for them to spend equal time with both of you? Is it best for them to spend like during the week with one, weekends with the other? What is best for the children? So say, for example, you live near the children's school and the other person lives 45 minutes away. It may not be in the children's interest for them to be with the other person during the week. So think about what is best for the children. 50-50 is a starting point. It's not always the end point, though, because that's not always fair for the children. I think you also asked, is it in their interest to be split between 2 homes? There's lots of ways that you can get to 50-50 arrangement or even other arrangements. And I'll talk a bit more about that on day 3. But it depends. You have to answer that question. Is it in their best interests to be sharing time equally? Some children do really well with it and some really don't like it. Is it better to divorce when your children are still dependent on you or wait till they are out of full-time education? Okay, really interesting question again. And this is a personal opinion. Some people would say that it's better to get divorced when the children are really young. They don't understand, they've not seen life differently. So when you live separately, that actually they don't know any better and they settle into routines really easily. So my youngest was 1 when I separated. She's not known a time where she's lived with her dad or me and her dad have lived together. She doesn't really know any of the details because she was too young to know. She always says to me that I'm quite happy. This is all I know. Yeah, split going between the 2 households. I do most of the childcare. My ex-husband likes to have every other weekend. So that's the arrangement we came to because that's the arrangement he wanted. And she's not known any different. We've had that for 13 years almost. So she's used to doing it because that's all she's done. So sometimes when they're young, they settle into a routine easier. Some people would say they would rather wait till their children have left full-time education or wait till 18 because they're living their lives. They're not too affected mentally by this because they're doing their own thing. They may be at uni, they're not even living at home. Some people will wait till 21 when their children have left home because then they can both get something smaller. They're not trying to house their children. You might find they're not as affected because they're already left home. So again, it's very difficult for me to say. It's a personal opinion. Both of my kids are over 18, and hence living with my mum is an option for me. Just want to know if this is an easier route to separation. It sounds like it could be, but make sure you've protected your assets. That's the only thing, because I don't know how you're holding assets, but we need to make sure you're protected before you take that route. Okay. How do I claim pension sharing? Okay, so if you want a pension share, again, tomorrow I'll be talking about the different options available. Pension sharing is one of them. You can only do pension sharing on divorce, though, so be aware of that. So you have to get divorced to get a pension share order. Pension sharing is where you both got well, one person's got a pension and you need to take something out of that pension and put it into a pension in your own name, which you would own straight away. So you would need to do that as part of your agreement. It would be something that you'd sit down and work out. You might need a pensions advisor to tell you what percentage needs to be shared, but it's quite a complicated area, so I won't be able to cover it all today or tomorrow, really. But I can give you some information. I changed the locks when my husband moved out, his decision to move out, but he is not happy and asking for keys via his solicitor. What do you advise? Okay, so do you own the property jointly? Will be something that I would need to know. Is it solely in your name? Is it solely in his name? If it had been agreed that he moves out and he's happily living elsewhere, then yeah, he shouldn't be entering while you're living there. You have a right of privacy. And you might say that actually, I don't want to give you the keys. What will happen is when you need to come over for whatever reason, ring on the doorbell, make arrangements with me, and I'll let you in. Is the person who applies the person who pays for the application? In a sole application, yes. In a joint application, it will be the second person. So there's applicant one, applicant two. Applicant two usually pays, but you can reach an agreement on splitting the costs. Do solicitor required for non-molestation order and occupation order? Well, you don't actually need a solicitor for anything as part of your divorce process. You can do all of it yourself. So I'll just answer this last question because I know we've gone over. I have been married for nearly 25 years and this is a struggle and why I get put off by family. Okay. Also, from a financial point of view, what benefits me and the children if I divorce while they're still dependent? If you divorce while they're still dependent on you, it depends again how much time you have with them. If you are the main carer or if you're the resident parent, then you may get child maintenance. In the finances, you may get a greater share of the assets if you are the main carer for the children. So financially, that could be a difference. But the thing is, you may have to work part-time while you're looking after the children. And so that can impact your career. So just bear that in mind as well. But everybody's situation is different. So I'd need to know a bit more to give you an idea on that. But I hope you found that helpful. Do let me know. That's it from me for today. Covered quite a bit. How was it? I'd love to get an idea of your thoughts. Was it useful for you? Did you get any takeaways from that? Are you looking forward to tomorrow to find out more about the finances? You're so helpful. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Do you have any more feedback? I'd love to know. Amazing. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Really helpful. Thank you. Looking forward to tomorrow. Very helpful. Definitely helpful. Thank you so much. You found it amazing. That's great. Grateful for your time and advice. Brilliant. I hope you have a good rest of the day. Do keep the comments coming in. If you've got any questions, if you've got any more feedback for me, I'd love to hear it. I'm going to go off camera, but you can carry on putting the direct messages and the messages in the group. So do let me know your thoughts. I would love to know. And looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Be ready for a really interesting session. And the recording will be in the hub. So feel free to join the hub. You can stay anonymous when you join that area. You can just put your email address and a different name so that you don't get recognized. I know one of you had that issue where you'd put your full name and then obviously the ID came back with your name on it. You can put anonymous and on whatever you want to do, just so you can access the recordings. And if you've got questions, you can put them in the hub as well. So I think Nauma may have put a link to the hub. I think it was there. How do I join the hub? I've lost the link. Could you again put the link there, Nelma, so that everyone can access, there you go, and access the workbook. It'd be great to put another link to the workbook. You'll find it in the hub anyway. And I'll also put details. I know somebody said I'd like to set up a meeting. We'll put details in the hub where you can. But Nelma, could you put an email address possibly so that anybody who wants to reach out can reach out too? So yeah, stay on, and Nelma will just put all the links there for the workbook, and my email address as well, so that you can reach out to me directly if you need to. There you go. There's the email address for you, and the workbook will be coming shortly as well there. So looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow, and do share your comments in the hub. Let me know if you're struggling with any of the tasks. I'd love to get your feedback on what your priorities are, what your vision is. All of this would be great to hear as you're working it through. Do take care, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.